Hello everyone, welcome to another video on SolidJs, and in this video we are going to see what is reactivity, how does SolidJs implements reactivity, and we'll also learn about signals and effects in SolidJs. So uh, let us first know what is reactivity. So reactivity is not a new concept. At its core, reactivity says that when you change your data, your UI should update automatically. So let me give you a very simple example using this Excel sheet. Let's say this is your data part in your application and this is your UI part. And let's say you change your data, then your UI updates. So in a way, this is reactivity. Now let me show you another example using Vanilla JS. So uh, here I have a blank uh, HTML page, and through JS I am rendering a variable count with a label count, and I have attached a click event listener to my document, and then every time I click the button, I'm just updating the count and calling the render function so that it repaints it to the document. So in a way, this is also reactivity. Since your count is changing, it gets reflected on the UI. Okay, so now we are clear what reactivity is. So now let's see how does reactivity works in Solid and uh, how does it change how Solid app works as opposed to React. Again, since I am from a React background, I will show you comparison against React. So this is a basic application. I have a label, I have a counter, and I have a button. And when I click on the button, it simply updates the UI. Okay. Now you, as you can see here on the console log, first you'll see that I have two logs, parent and child, and they are logged only once. If I go to my application, I have this log here and one log here. Now, how it is different from React? So I'll just show you the functionality and you'll automatically see what's the difference. So when I click on the button, each time I am clicking the button, uh, we are getting logs of parent and child again and again. So what happens in React is it uses a diffing algorithm and virtual DOM to know what element is updated. But what it does is it updates the whole component tree. So for right now, we have two components in the component tree, and it updates all of them since my state is being changed in the parent component. And it does not happen like that in Solid. So it makes it really efficient since there are only since my app is rendered only once, it will be fast and efficient. Now let's go to the uh, Solid application once. So you can see I have created a signal which is very similar to your use state, and then I have create effect which is similar to your effect and use effect in React. Now when we create a signal in Solid, we receive a getter function and a setter function, and what we are doing here is simply passing our state to the child component, and it updates. When we update our state here on the click of the button, it updates the child component's h2 tag surgically. So in a way, Solid is creating a dependency graph where it notices that this h2 DOM element is dependent on this prop, and this prop uh, is a state. So internally, it knows that my h2 DOM element depends on this count, and whenever I click on the button, it will just update that h2 tag. So this is how signals work. And what effect does is, let's say, uh, what effect does is, so you must have noticed every time I click on this button, it logs value of count 1, value of count 2, and you'll see that on the click of button I have written nothing such as log that statement. Instead, I have written this statement here. So what effect is for is, whenever your signal changes, you want to do something. So there is a dependency on the signal, and on that dependency, I want to perform a function. So every time I click a button, I want to make a console log. A use case may be when some signal changes, when your state changes, you want to make a maybe service call or update animation. So those can be use cases. So this is how a solid implements reactivity, and it calls its reactivity as fine-grained reactivity, uh, because of the reason we just saw, because only individual DOM elements are being updated and not the whole application. Your components are functions, and it will only run once in its lifetime. Now let me show you how does signals and effects work under the hood, and we'll see at the end how just 30 lines of code helps build a reactive library. This example is based on SolidJS's documentation. I will give the link in description and you can read in detail there. But just let's go through the code once, and I'll also run this to just wrap around our heads how does it works. So we when we create a signal here, we want to initialize it with some value, and it should return a getter function and a setter function. And we'll also see how why it returns a function instead of a value. So uh, now I must tell you, this signal and effect is based on what you must have already studied, called a publish subscriber model. So we have uh, a signal, and we have some observers watching that signal. Whenever that signal changes, we want to do something. Those observers want to do something. So we have a variable where we initialize it with whatever we have supplied. Then we have a set of observers which should be watching this signal. Then there is a read function, and then there is a write function. So in read function, we are saying if there is an observer watching this signal, add it to the list of observers that we have for the signal, and return the value when we are reading it. In the write, we first check if the value has not changed, just simply return. If the value has changed for the signal, assign it to a new value. And for each observer, perform the function it wants to do. Like whatever we saw in the previous application, we were console logging. So do that logging or make that service call. So for each of the observer, it will make the call, and then we simply return. Then we come to effects. So as we see, whenever we want to perform a side effect which is dependent on a signal, uh, we register that and we run that function. So we supply a function. This is the function which we are supplying, and what we do here is we uh, we assign the current observer to a temporary variable. Then we assign our function here. We execute our function, and then we reassign the current observer to the temporary variable. So let's see how are we implementing this fine-grained reactivity in SolidJS. So it first goes to this statement and it enters the create signal, and you can see here we have an initial value of 1. It initializes the variable. We create a set of observers for our signal, and then we simply return our read and write. Okay. Then we go through the effect. Now see, initially we have our current observer as null, since we assume no one is observing initially to the signal. We assign it to a temporary variable. Then we execute our function here. So what will it execute? It will execute this function, which will make this log statement. So you see it comes here, and then what we are doing in our log statement, we are reading the value of count. So it goes to count. Then uh, we assigned our function to current observer. So it is adding to the list of observers which we have. So what it is doing here, it is adding this uh, dependency on our signal. So now what will happen is every time you uh, make change to this signal, so every time you make change to the signal, it will run that dependency for us. So let's go through the example. It adds to the observer list. As you can see, there is one function added to this set, and it returns the value. So you see it makes a log. Now uh, and then again the call stack comes back, and we are again making the current observer as null. Okay. Then there is another effect which is again dependent on count, but it is doing something else, as you can see. So now you must have get a hang of it. What it will do is it will go here, it will execute our function, but before that we are assigning it to our current observer. It uh, goes to this function. Now it will go to the read. See, now we are we are adding this dependency to the list of observers we have, so that whenever we change something, we run that effect. So you see it makes a log. Now the real magic is here. We are just setting our count to 2, and you will see it will run this dependency again without doing anything else, without we doing anything else. So you see it comes here, and if I just run it, you see we have the logs again. So now you have seen how signals and effect works under the hood, and you must have a better understanding of how Solid implements its reactivity, how it makes it very efficient. And now we also know why this count or signal returns us a getter function, because here what we are doing is we are registering dependencies on our signal, and it won't be possible if we are returning a simple value from our signal, because the entire thing which we are doing here is registering our observers, uh, and those observers are executing here. And but uh, if It won't be possible if we just return the value and not a function, because the entire uh, the entire magic happens here. That's why it is a function instead of value. That's for this video. Drop a comment if you have any questions, and make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.